So today the plan is to help you practice the access part. And we see the first section. Many have already submitted them. This will count as extra credit. If you don't do it, you won't get penalized. Wouldn't hurt to have a little extra, and besides, we're almost giving you the answers. So let's start by downloading this database right there. I'm going to send it. Let's see, this one, I think when I click on here, it wants to open it in Access. Let's see if I right click. Can I do a save as? No, it doesn't let me right click. Let's try this guy. No, it's wanting me to take me there. There, see, it opens, for me, it opens right up in Access. So first thing you do, just to make sure it gets saved in the right place, I'm going to do a file, save database as, make sure it's going to the right location, not some strange download location. I'm going over my little drive here, save it in my folders. Section 2, and I'm going to call that practice. Always enable that top yellow bar or you will have troubles and tribulation. Now, before we even look at the instructions, like we would do with any database, let's just see what's in it. The easiest way to see what's in it is just double click on any table. In this one, there's a lot of tables because I found this Bible database on the internet, had a lot of extra tables. Don't panic when you see a lot of extra tables. In this one, all we really care about is these first two. So let's just explore what's in those first two tables. Then we'll go back to the instructions. So let's double click on that first table. And I see in here that I have multiple columns listed. This one called bib ID, and I see it just counts, starts at 1, and if I slide through, I see it just keeps counting up all the way to 31,103, total number of verses in the Bible. I think that number's right. I don't know for sure the source, if they got it typed in exactly right. That'd be something, if you were actually going to sell this, you would verify against some other source of the King James Authorized Standard Version 1901. So I have chapter verse, looks like that has to do with like we expect, the chapter number, verse number. The narration field, that's the text of the verse. And I see this book num. It's all ones right now. It's if I slide through, it turns to 2 and 3. So that must go with the number of the book in the Bible. And I see this checkbox. Sometimes it's checked, called red, and sometimes it's left blank. So that has something to do with the design of my table. Before we even look at the structure of this table, let's open this Bible Master Table. Double click. And here it looks like all this has is something to do with the name of the book. There's an O and an N. I'm guessing that means Old Testament or New Testament. A short version of the book name and a long version of the book name. That's probably the one that's most helpful, most readable. MAS, real name. And MAS ID, it looks like they just are numbered, and I see that they're numbered in the order that they appear in the Bible. So if I wanted biblical order, MAS ID of the name of the book would give me in biblical order, but I could decide I want to give them in alphabetical order. And it looks like if I only wanted Old Testament or New Testament, I would look for an O or an N in this field. Now that was just me guessing by looking through the data. Let's go to Design View and see if the comments in Design View have helped us. I'm going to switch to Design View because I've adjusted my columns. It may ask me to save. And look at that. They did a nice job of putting in comments in the description. And they made a very important comment here that MAS ID has a relationship or links to the book number in that PASB table. The book, abbreviated name, OTNT, whether it's old or new, and the full name of the book is at MAS real name. I don't worry about the field sizes here. Notice everything is short text. This something is auto-numbered, so when they enter data in, it automatically increases the number. Not terribly interesting, but Easy enough to explore. Design, Batik datasheet view. You can always toggle back and forth. All right, and I can close the table. Remember, closing tables makes Access happy if you ever try to do something else. And I did make some changes, so I'm going to go ahead with saving the changes. This one here, let's look at the design of the table holding the text of the Bible. So there's that book number that matches the number in the Bible Master Table. Let's look at the design of the BASV 1901. Comment there, unique key for every verse, the chapter number, verse number, and red. I see red, yes or no. They did not explain what red is, so I have to guess. I'm going to update this comment. Check if I have read this text. So a way to have a reading plan. Now we're not changing the structure at this point, we're just adding a comment to an existing structure. Now before we do anything more, let's just see what instructions were given. So back to the instruction sheet, it says, create a form for browsing the verses. We'll just go in this order, and unless we might move this one to the last thing we do. But let's just do the easy things first, creating forms for browsing the verses. There's going to be two ways to do this. So let's just do both ways that would be acceptable, unless the instructions say specifically how to do it. So, because I want to create a form, I'm going to close this table. I'm done with any changes so far. I did add a comment, so it's asking me to save changes. Yes. And now, the 3-click method to create a form. It did say to browse the verses, so I have to remember, which table was it that had the verses in them? Well, this BASV has the verses. There's the first click. That's the table I want to create a form for. The next click is the Create tab. And the third click is Form. And that has a form letting me browse through the text of the Bible. Now, instead of the book name, I just have book number 1. Bib ID I really don't care about, but it's showing in the form. This is a valid form for browsing the verse text. And now that I have the form, I would go back to my instructions and see, did it specify what to name this form when I save it? Since this piece of instruction doesn't say that, I'm just going to do a save. When I close it, it will ask me to save, or Control S. And since no other instructions are given me, I'm going to head and give it the name of the table. And then down here, I see the name of my form showing up. If I decide I don't want this name and want to rename it, let's see what happens if it's still open and I try to rename it. Oh, sorry, you can't rename it while it's open. Well, let's close it. And then suppose I realize, I was supposed to name it something else. I can always right-click rename it, and it highlights that, and I'll call it Verse Browser Form. So don't panic. You could start from scratch because it's only 3 clicks, but you could always just rename it if it's the form that you want it, just in rename. Okay, so that was getting an easy instruction than the first one, creating a form for browsing the verses. But before I leave here, I want to show you a better way, although that one would be okay. Notice there is a query already built for you. It's called All Verses of the Bible. Let's just open that to see what shows up. And look, I see the name of the book and chapter, verse, and then the text. I kind of like that display. And it gives me all 31,103. I see that in the number of records showing up. I don't have to modify this query, but I could base a form on this query instead. So I'm going to close this, and let's go back to my 3-click method. Instead of creating a form on the BASV, let's use that query. Click on that to select it, click Create, and click Form. Now I have a little more useful form. It shows me the name of the book, chapter and verse, and as I browse through this, I can see exactly where I am. I don't have to memorize that book number 3 is Leviticus. it gives me the name right there. And of course, the boxes are way too big for chapter and verse. That's something in an advanced Office class you could learn, and you're welcome to explore this because Access can be very useful. Just going to design of the form that lets me adjust anything in my form. And I found the first time I was using Access databases, this kind of thing pretty easy to just figure out on your own. As you start getting fancier, then it gets a little more challenging to display what you want. But form view is really all you need. Since I haven't saved it yet, I'm going to do Control S, and all the verses of the Bible I'll put in here from query. So remember, you can always create a form to browse the results of a query. Nice looking browser of the verses. And that one's done. So 2 ways to get the browsing of the verses. One, go straight from the data, raw data from the table, all the fields that aren't always useful, but it will work. If I have a query showing the verses, I could do that form as well. Excuse me. Okay, let's try the next. Create a report displaying Psalm 23. A report displaying Psalm 23. So there's actually 2 steps involved here. I'm going to do the create the query from scratch. Rather than use the queries that are there, I want to make sure I understand how to create the query of Psalm 23, and then I'll do the report of Psalm 23. So before peeking and see how they did it, I'm going to do my own if I can remember this. So create query, and now this is the first time we've created a query on this database. Remember, this has the verse text, so I need the information, the text of the verse from that table. But remember, the name of the book rather than the number of the book is in Bible Master, so I need that table as well. And they are related. It automatically shows up that the book num here means I'm referring to the Mass ID in the Bible Master table. The text I want to see when I display the text of Psalm 23 will be, well, the name of the book, MAS real name, not the abbreviated MAS book. So I double-clicked on MAS real name, double-click on chapter, double-click verse, and, oops, I actually clicked twice. Delete that. And narration. I'm going to enlarge these so you can see the whole title there. And the reason I need them linked is because I want to see the real name, not just the number in this column. Before doing any criteria, there I see that the query gives me those 4 columns of data. Now it's time to add the parameters so I only display Psalm 23. Well, the criteria is the real name of the book is Psalms. So I'm going to type in the name of the book, Psalms. The chapter, 23. Would there be any other criteria? No, because I want all the verses of chapter 23, so I don't need to put like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. I can just leave that blank. To view it now, here I see the verses of Psalm 23 showing up in the correct order because they're in the database in the correct order. Just to make sure that if the database ever got scrambled or something, I would sort them ascending by verse number. Yes? Let's take a look. Make sure you've clicked off of anything that's it's thinking maybe you're editing. Psalms plural. Because the name of the book in the database is plural psalms. If you don't get anything, don't panic. And I accidentally clicked the box narration. So I accidentally turned that off. There we go. It's still not working? Okay. So it's safest, even though it did show up, since you do want them sorted ascending by verse number, I made sure to set that ascending. So there we go, Psalm 23. And I'm going to save this as query. I'll call it Psalm 23. And I'm going to put my name on there because there's other ones already in there. Let's now that I have the query, to create a report of Psalm 23, I click the query, click create, and click report. I don't have to do report design. I'm going to let the report generate a lovely display of Psalm 23. Now before I can print it, I go to print preview, and that lets me print it, lets me see how it would appear on a sheet of paper. I can close the print preview. I can go back to report view or close the report. Since I hadn't saved it yet, yes, I'm going to save the changes, and I'll call it, yeah, it seems like a good name for a report. So that was a two-step process. Even though it's a small sentence, we had to create the query to display Psalm 23 and then display the report. Unless it would say specifically in the instruction, using the query already given to you, create a report on Psalm 23, or more likely that there was not other queries already in there for you. Let's just take a look at these other queries just to see how it was done before. I'm going to right-click Design View of that Psalm 23, and let's see what's different about this one. That first column, this person was lazy. They didn't remember how to spell Psalms, but they remember again with PS. So they just put the book name, the full name, MAS real name, to be PS star. It added the like and quotes around it, and chapter 23. Oh, look at this one. They sorted it alphabetically by verse. That's a strange way. So you don't get the order of the biblical chapter verses in that chapter. You get alphabetical order of the verses. So here's a new challenge for you that have memorized the Bible already. Now it's time for you to memorize the Bible alphabetically, not just by Bible verse number. So challenge your friends. You could bring any chapter up and say, hey, we've got it memorized. Could we do Psalm 23 alphabetically? And if I wanted to create a report for that, I could. Now, since the instructions didn't say you didn't need to make any changes to the existing Psalm 23, this is just exploring other ways to do it. Let's see this other one. If I right-click Design View on that one, this one, I'll expand it out a bit here. Let's see. They do ascend by verse. Oh, and this time, they knew a better spelling, but they didn't remember whether there's an S that goes there or not. So they just put, well, Psalm something. Remember, star could be nothing there or anything there. Watch what happens if I do Psalm ? Will it work? Yes, because there is something there. Let's try Psalm ? Oh, I get no results. What double question mark means, there are two letters following the word Psalm. It could be any letter, but there have to be two letters. But if I did Psalm ? star, that would work because there's nothing that comes after the letter S, and star means, okay, there might not be anything there. But the easiest one is, let's see, if I did P star, I get Proverbs as well as, would I get 1st and 2nd Peter? Let's see. Let's do P star. I get Proverbs 23 and Psalm 23, and notice they are sorted by verse number rather than by book number. Is there any other book that begins with the Bible? No, those are the only two in the Bible that begin with the letter P. So P star, PS star would work. And let's see, does it matter if it's capital P? Let's try it. Nope, it didn't matter. It's not case sensitive. I wouldn't be surprised if somewhere in the properties of this, I could force it to be case sensitive. Somewhere there might be searching or something. But don't worry about that. And if I generate a report, remember, it's choose the query, create report. All right, I'm done with that query. I'm going to close it. Let's see, I made some interesting changes. I'll go ahead and do yes. Now let's check our next task. So we're creating reports, and that's something you will be asked to do on the final is provide queries, build queries on a table. Now you may need to build your table yourself, so be prepared to do that if you are asked that. At least be prepared to make changes to the table. Well, let's come back to here now. We're going to display the book name, chapter, verse, and text of all verses in chapter 3 and verse 16. All right. I could do a save as in the one I've already built, but I like to have practice building them. That's the most important practice here. So don't be lazy and say, well, it's just like the one I just did. I'm going to open that, do a save as, and then forget how you built it. Do a create, query design, the two tables that I need the text from and the name of the book linked together, and I want the book, chapter number, verse number, narration. Now back to the instructions. It was all these chapter 3 verse 16, right? Yeah, all verses in chapter 3 and verse 16. Key word here, and chapter or verse 16. So the criteria is chapter 3 on the same line because it's and 16. And data sheet view, there they show up. They do show up in biblical order. If I want to make sure they show up in biblical order, I could go back to design view, add the mass ID or book number. Since they're linked, it's the same thing. And I could sort ascending on book number to make sure they appeared in the biblical order. So double click ascending just to ensure the proper ordering, even though they came up okay already because they were entered in biblical order. And I can always adjust the height of the row to read the whole verse. Now just for fun here, no, I guess we'll stop there. We'll do some more fun later. We'll save this one as all chapter 3 verse 16 for my new theology. I actually met a guy once that we were doing Bible studies together, and he said, you should check every verse, chapter 3 verse 16, because John 3:16 significant. Other verses he thought were very helpful. 3 verse 16 in the New Testament. Let's see if others are interesting. Let's see. That's not as much. Oh, there's 2 Timothy 3:16. That's a good verse. It's Colossians 3:16. That's a really good verse. Are they somehow related? Now that's where you start going off the track. That you may find something interesting related, but make that be something that you use perhaps to help you remember things. Don't base your theology on things like that, or you're going to be going off the track fairly quickly that somehow 3:16 is an inspired reference. It may bring you interesting verses, but remember the references and numbering was not part of the original text. Don't make that be an important part of theology. And this guy wasn't completely off track, but I gave him a little caution, and he understood that you can't go too far with that and base some important theology on where it was. But Access lets you do that kind of thing. Have you heard of people doing other numerical analysis of verses in the Bible? Taking the Hebrew text and lining it up in big grids and looking, can you find like a word search puzzle? Can you find certain words in the Bible? There's a whole, people have written big programs about that, and they make up, or they say some pretty crazy things. They can find every name of every rabbi of the synagogues, so they're in the Bible. Well, if you look, I bet you if you arrange the letters right, you could find any word whatsoever in any dictionary, because you're simply rearranging the letters until you find something in a diagonal or cross. So that's something that you could actually write a program for. The database doesn't let you do that much. Okay, so chapter 3, verse 16, I did make some adjustments to the columns, so I saved changes. And now I can go back and try the next thing. Let's see. I want to add, well, we already have a checkbox to the table named red, and let's just check that what we did, and let's add something of our own since they already did that for us. Remember how to do that. Right click design view, takes me to the design of my structure of my database. Here they already had a checkbox. Notice that checkbox is a thing called a yes no. Because that wasn't terribly obvious unless you played with them a while. Remember we did have set visible. That's the checkbox. Let's add something else. Suppose we want to keep notes on, we'll call that personal notes. Suppose we want to keep personal notes on any Bible verse and have it attached to my Bible verse in my text. I call the name of the field personal notes. What type of data should that be? Short text, long text, number, large number, date, time. There's two possibilities here. Yeah, long text. If you notice, remember with short text, if I made it short text, I'm limited to 255 characters. If I didn't want to have that limit, I could make it long text. And then there's no limit on how long it can be. But if you want even more flexibility, actually, we'll leave the notes here, and I'll put a little comment. Only text notes. I'll call it indefinite length or unlimited length. Let's add another one. Let's call this perhaps forms or files. How about we file attachments? And guess what style or data type we have available to us? Look at that, a style called attachment. And I did notice one other. Let's go ahead and do any links. And let's make that a hyperlink. I think you're limited to one. So I could have links to websites. I could have an attachment, and we'll take a look at what we can attach here. We could attach Word documents. We could attach pictures. Perhaps we travel to that place that's mentioned in that verse. I could actually attach it to my database. I could even attach a video file of a depiction of something going on in that verse. So attachment is a very nice possible type of data. Let's just see how it would look as I browse that table now. Switch over to Datasheet View, saving my changes to the structure. And now over here on the right, I can do personal notes and just type forever. I could, let's see what happens. Click on the paperclip, nothing happens. Watch what happens if I double click on the paperclip. I could add any document to this. Could be a video, could be another database, I suppose. Could be an Excel spreadsheet or a photo. And it'll show up as an attachment. Links, I could have it to link to a famous Bible college. Let's see if I click on that, will it take me there? Look at that. I click on it, it takes me to the man's website. So it could be useful, just to give you a practice. The main thing to learn here is you have the power to change the design of your database, adding columns. You can even delete columns. It'll warn you, hey, you're losing all that data. So they already had a checkbox. We added a couple more things just for practice. Modifying our database structure. Okay, now let's write a query. Uh-oh, it sounds interesting. I need an update query that sets read to be true for all the verses in the book whose name is given as a parameter. Uh-oh, I've got two things to do. I need it to ask me the name of the book, and then when it runs, it will update the read to be true. So it's best to do something like this in 2 steps. Let's first get a query that asks me for the book, and then we'll make it an update query to actually make a change. Okay, so I'm done with this table, so I'm going to close that table. Remember, don't have things open or Access will complain. I'm going to create a query. I need the name of the book, so I need the BAS or the Bible Master, but the checkbox is in the BASV, so I need that table too. And so I'm going to double click the real name of the book. I'm going to have them spell the full name of the book. And the has it been read checkbox, I'm going to add that to the query. But now I want it to ask me. If I didn't have anything else, I'd get all the 31,000 verses in the Bible with the name of the book in front of it. That's not what I want. I want it to ask me what book to search for. Well, remember, in criteria, we could determine what book it is. Remember, when you put it in square brackets in the criteria, that's when Access will then ask you a question for what goes here in criteria. So I'm going to have the question, book name, please. I'll put that in square brackets. Then when I run the query, or view data sheet view, it will pop up the little question, book name please, and let's enter Jude. And I click OK. And it shows me all the verses in Jude have been marked as read. So it's already marked as read. But I want to do something else now. I want to make sure it gets marked as read. And this is where the update query comes in now. So the name given as a parameter, that message will be displayed. Whatever I type will be the criteria for what happens next. Now that we turn it into update query by clicking up here onto query type, clicking update, now I have a place in the update to row. And I'm not going to change the name to something. I'm going to change the red box, the checkbox, which is a yes or no. I think I could type yes here or true here. I like to think of true, not yes or no. Now, when I run this query, it's going to ask me a book name because the book name is in the criteria. And for some reason, when I do this, that criteria gets moved down further. When I run this, it'll say, oh, book name please. Let's make it Jude. I click OK. And red is being updated? Yeah, it's being updated to true. Now, it didn't give me a warning like I was expecting. Let me try another book. Let's try John. It didn't give me a warning. What's going on? It's supposed to be giving me a warning. Book name, update to true. That's weird. I thought if that was going to warn me that I'm updating so many verses. I'm going to save this query. I'm going to call it update red checkbox. Oh, I know. I think I know. Since he sees that it was already checked as true, he's not seeing any changes being made. Let's try to change this to false just for fun. And let's see if I get the warning this time. Book name, please. I'm going to enter John. Didn't give me the warning. Let's try Jude. Nope, not there. False. Let's try running it. Oh, let's try Jude. There I get the warning. Did I not click the exclamation point last time? That must have been what happened. Let's try true again. I clicked the wrong place to actually run the query. I clicked the datasheet view I'm so used to. Instead of run, there's where you get the warning. When you see the warning, you know your update query is working and it's making some changes. Even though it's already true because I ran this once, it still warns you I'm going to be setting 25 rows regardless of what's there. And it reminds you you can't undo that. So there's the update. For some reason, when I added the criteria, it moved it down. I like showing it right there rather than being moved down. But any of these rows will work. And saving that query. And now I have an update query as requested. Now it's time to do a few more. I want to show you a couple more here just to give you some practice, because I know what's going to be on the final. I might tweak it a little bit. I reserve that right, but mainly this kind of thing. Let's show you one thing here. Let's go to let's go ahead and make one. I'm going to do a create a query, and I'm going to make up something right now. Let's create a query that displays the verses that have the name Esther in them. Okay? I need the text of the verse. I need the name of the book because I want to see what name rather than what number book it is. And close. I want to see the name of the book, the chapter, the verse, the narration of the verse, and what did I say? Esther in the book. So, where are my criteria? There we go. The criteria is going to be in the narration part, Esther somewhere in the chapter, in the verse. Is this the correct answer? Let's find out. I get no results. But I know Esther's in the Bible, so I know I don't have the right answer. So what do I need to change this to make it be a verse, any verses that contain the name Esther? And we'll give it a try. What's the solution to finding the verses with Esther in them? Go wild. Yes. Yeah, you put an asterisk. If I wanted to begin with Esther, I put an asterisk at the end. And it will, I think, let's see if I forget that, if I delete that, let's go. Let's see if it puts one for me. Oh, look at that. Since it started with a quote, if I don't put one in there, it's not happy. And if you have a wildcard, it also adds the like to it. There I get two verses that do start with Esther. If I put an asterisk on both sides, oh, I've somehow got an insert, or out of insert mode. There we go. Now, I find all the verses that have Esther, and we have 45 of them. Now, this was a nice one because Esther is unique. So let's go ahead and save this one, and I'll call this one Search for Esther. Esther spelled right. Now I'm going to be lazy. I'm going to modify this and search and then do a save as. After giving you this criteria, I want to search for a verse that has the word ice in it. All the verses in the Bible have the word ice in them. Try the same thing that you just did. Try star, ice, star, and see if you get the correct number of verses. Let's see, Genesis 39:18. Well, I don't see the word ice in there. What's going on? The word voice has ice inside of it. So we got a problem here. It's going to find voice. Is there any other officer that's finding ice in it? So we got a problem. What do we do? I can't do star, ice, star. I'm going to find everything else. What should I do? No asterisk? I'll find the verses that start with ice. So not quite. Yes, you have to put a space on either side. Star, space, and then a space, star. This will find verses with ice somewhere in the middle of the verse. And now I'm down to only 2. Are there only 2? Let's find out. How about an OR criteria? How about if it begins with the word ice and then followed by anything? And if I go to the next line, it'll add the like for me. How about at the end of the verse? Star ice. Well, the problem is there might be punctuation at the end. So this is with verses that end with the word ice but no punctuation. Let's add star space ice. Here's beginning with the word ice, ending with ice and a space, and then the word ice, and then ending with the word ice, followed by one possible piece of punctuation. I might get away with actually a star there. Let's see what we get. Still just the 2. But you can see how for certain words, let's see, how about the? I suppose we could do it with the. No, we'll just leave it with ice. But see how I can add ors if I think, well, maybe I'm missing particular ones. Beginning or ending with ice. So let's save this one as icy verses. Uh-oh. What did I just do? I started with another one. I meant to do a save as. I just wiped out the one I just did. Save object as, save as. That's an easy thing to forget when I'm modifying what I'm working on, to hit Control S too fast, and I messed up. I messed search for ester up. Now it's ester is search for ice. So I'm going to call this icy, and I'll go fix it so it's back to icy verses. Now it's a new search, saved as search. Now I'm going to change it back to searching for ester. Oh, I have to delete one line at a time. I can't do multiple selects. And then I'm going to do save as, so I get my ester one back. Ester, somewhere in the verse. And before I do a Control S, I'm going to do the file save as object, and I'm called ester. Now they're both correct queries. So be careful if you modify an existing query, do a save as. Well, we're almost out of time. Let's just do one more of your choice. And I'm going to build it from scratch just for good practice. Any particular verse you would like to go. Oh, there's one more thing. Oh, I forget. No, you don't get a choice. I'm creating one from scratch. The text, the master, close. I want to see the name, chapter, verse, narration. And let's look for all the verses in. You know what? What I want to do, I want to look for. How about this? Let's do chapter verse. Let's do. The name is going to be John. Chapter 3. All the verses. Uh-oh. Why isn't John showing up? It must be Gospel of John. So let's do star John and see if it shows up. There we go. Gospel of John 3. See how if I did it without the asterisk, I'd have to spell it out completely. If I just remember, it's John, Gospel of John. Now, I want to study more than just the text of the verse and search for something, such as Jesus in the verse or something. Let's do a special thing. Let's display the length of the verse using a custom field. I'm going to call it length. Remember this? This, what comes before the column, means what goes in this column is going to be displayed with a caption saying length. And this will be given to you. You won't have to do the research to find this out. This len function is a way to give you the length of any text. Well, what text do I want the length of? I want the narration. That's the text of the verse. So when I'm referring to something, this is where I can use the square brackets in a different way. Square brackets here don't mean ask me for the narration. Because the word narration matches a column with the same word, instead of asking me, it will automatically find the narration, and look what it does. It shows me the length of every verse in John chapter 3. Let's just for fun sort them ascending. Sort them ascending. And now I have from shortest to longest the verses in John chapter 3. By the number of letters in the verse. So custom fields, remember it's the name colon, that will be the title of that column. This will be given to you of let's figure out and do something about the length. And there's creative things that you might find out about the length of the verses. We will stop there. I'm going to save this as John 3 verses by length. And now you have practiced, and you get credit for being here, practicing through this, and uploading it. It will count as an extra credit. You won't be penalized for not doing this, but who's going to avoid getting a little extra boost on their grade? We're done with that. The final date of the final, I'll stop the recording.